Oh, let me close the breakout rooms. Can I do that from here? Yeah, cool. All right. So we left off, and I actually got further than I had thought. So we are up to the displaying data. So we got up to this point right here. I just didn't realize I had got that far. So we're up to retrieving and displaying data under the CRUD section. So the only thing I did is I named my, or just did my HTML a little differently, and I named my route a little differently. So I can change it to look like the platform, just in case you're following along. So if I open up my integrated terminal, I'm most likely, since my terminal was closed, not in my virtual environment. So to do that, it's pip env shell. And I can say pip list to make sure that I am in the right place. Make sure I see, there we go. PyMySQL, Jinja, Flask, and all that stuff. So now I can just say Python server.py. And if I come back to my, and I finally made a link to localhost. Okay, so I did some changes because James asked me a question, and James, to answer your question, they come back as integers, the IDs. That was your question, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so the only difference they have in the platform, they have little prettier looking HTML. So I'm just going to copy this and paste it in. So instead of the kind of sloppy HTML I have, I'm just going to put their code in here. I'm going to paste it, save it. Now I'm going to go back and see if it worked. And I don't see my friends. So the issue is in the platform, they named the variable that they're passing all friends, and I just called it friends. So I just need to come back into my route and change this to all friends. Okay, so now if I save this, go back, refresh, I see all my friends. Okay. Questions so far?
Can you go back to your server, Python, please?
Yeah. So just to reiterate, this is where we start, right? We're at the root. The root is connected to, or the server is connected to my model, right? My model's in the file called friend.py. So if I open that up, close this, we don't need that. So my route, every time I refresh my index on my website, right? If I go to the browser, I'm going to move it off screen for now. I'm going to hit the refresh button off the screen. You can see that every time I hit it, it's hitting my database. If you see my server, you can see that every time we hit the refresh button again, it goes through and it hits the server. It calls this method, the friends.getAll. It hits the server, calls the class method. This query runs, and I'm connecting to my server with the first Flask. Passing the query in. I'm printing the results because James asked me a question about the data that comes back. So I'm printing the results that come back from the database. So that is what we're seeing right here. So you can see that it comes back as a list of dictionaries, right? So this is the code that's coming back from the server. And then we're taking that list of dictionaries, we're setting up a list to hold them, and then we iterate over all of these dictionaries, right? So if let me pretty print them so we can see better. Print. So if I print them, save the file, if I hit refresh, now I get all of my data coming back, and you can see that the it's not what happened. Oh, here it is. Sorry. So yeah, here's it's printing them as a kind of easier to read, right? So there's Jeff. I don't know why is it only printing Jeff? That's weird. Oh, okay, I see why. Never mind. So yeah, I've got to iterate over it. So if I wanted to print everything in the list, I've got to iterate over it. So never mind about the pretty print. But basically that comes back from the database as a list of dictionaries. We use those dictionaries here, right? Because friend is each individual item in this list that comes back, right? And we're creating a new instance of friend from each one of these. And then in our HTML, I can put these side by side. If I look in my index.html, it's over here. So this, I pass it to my HTML file as all friends, right? So I'm using Jinja, the Jinja for syntax. I'm saying for one friend in all friends. And then I'm using p tags, just plain old HTML tags. I have the first name, which corresponds to this. And then one friend dot first name. So one friend is each individual object. So the first friend is Chuck. So it prints his first name, his last name, his occupation, and it does that for all three. Okay, questions about this so far? Okay, so let me go back to the platform. So we left off here, queries with variable data. I'm going to skip SQL injection and MVC. I'm thinking I'm going to go over it tomorrow just because I want to, modularization is basically, we're going to break up the file that the Flask app that we're making into modules, and to like do that on the same day as we introduce it, I think is kind of weird. So I think I'm going to put off the modularization until tomorrow. And we'll just practice with Flask today, or making it without modularization.
Yeah,
okay, so
thank you.
Yeah, right. It's kind of weird, right? You're going to make a file, and then all of a sudden you kind of rearrange it, right? So at least you'll have a day to work with this, and then we can change it up tomorrow. Okay, so we're going to go from DB to, I'm sorry, from form to DB. So we're going to be basically doing an insert statement, right? So we're going to be, what is insert? Which part of CRUD is that?
The R,
No, R is read.
the C.
U for update.
You know, actually, you're right.
I hate the
C,
CRUD
right, we're
metaphor.
creating. You're right, we're creating.
Ah, it was one of those.
You're right.
It was one
yeah,
for four.
I was thinking the wrong one. You're right. So in order to make the update, we need to add a class method for all the CRUD operations. We want to have a separate class method. Okay, there's probably a way to do it with making it more concise, but just so we can understand what's going on, we're gonna make a separate class method. So this is all my existing file, my existing friends model that I have in place. So I'm just gonna copy this class method. I'm gonna copy it, and I'm gonna go into my friend model right here, and I'm just gonna add that method to my class. Okay, so you guys can see, let me zoom out a little bit. So I'm coming down here, I'm going to be still inside my class, right? So remember, blocks in Python are made with indentation. So if I'm indented 4 spaces or whatever consistent spacing I use, it's going to be inside of my friend class. So if I paste this right here, my spacing got messed up a little bit. So I'm going to fix my class method decorator. And so let's walk through this. Zoom in so you guys can see. So we've defined our class method as save, right? So the save method is just like the get all method. We're going to have a query that's going to be the SQL syntax we need to do whatever we want to do. So in our case, we want to insert or create a new friend. Right. So in order to do that, we use this kind of strange looking syntax. It's not exactly a format tag. It's more like remember way back when we did strings, there was a third syntax where you did a % and you filled in the places with like %s and %d if it was a %s if it was a string, %d if it was a number. So this is more like that. This is more akin to what the syntax we're actually using. And this is called, I'm blanking, so let me look and see what it's called.
Is that interpolation thing?
Yes, not interpolation,
The old school way?
the old school way. Prepared statement, there it is. So a prepared statement, this is part of the reason we do this is to prevent SQL injections, which I'll talk about briefly at the end. So this prepared statement, this is enables us to sanitize our data to make sure we're not getting anything passed in that shouldn't be in there. Okay, so we have these, the SQL syntax is pretty much what we're familiar with, right? We insert into our table name. We list all of the columns that we want to insert into, right? So our friend has a first name, a last name, an occupation, created at and updated at. And you'll notice that we're actually invoking the now function right here for those. Okay, so the OCC is occupation, L name is last name, F name is first name. I find this, I'm going to leave it that way for now. So we run our query, we're passing in data, right? So data, when we try to save a instance of our class, we pass in the data attribute or the data dictionary. And then we run the connect to MySQL, we pass in our database name, we invoke the query DB, we pass in the query and the data. Okay. You'll forget to pass in the data. I do all the time, right? So you'll have a query and it's not working, and it's because on this one you don't pass in data, but on this one you do. Okay, so that will return, basically we're returning this, so the data that we get back is just the ID of what gets submitted to our database. Any questions about this so far? Okay. So the next part is, so we have our class method on our model. Next thing we need to do is create a form so we can add a friend. Okay, so I'm just going to put this, they say to put it in index.html, so that's where I'm going to put it. And let me save this file so I don't forget. Okay, going to index.html. I have all my friends being listed here, so I'm going to put my form to create a new friend right here. Okay, so it's been a couple days since we've done this, so let's review how the form works. So how do we get our form data from here to, or actually from, where does it go from here? If we have the user fill out a form, and let me show the form real fast. So there's our form. So the user fills this out. Where does it go?
Create friends.
Create friends, but where does in what yeah, perfect. Perfect. So this is the route where we're sending the data, right? We're using the post method. It's going to send all this data to our route we designate called create friend. So if I go into server and I notice it's not there. So if I come in here and I try to fill this form out, that's weird. Last name, occupations, I don't know where that's coming from. So it's going to be not found. Now, when we see this, where do we go?
Server.
Server.py. So let me go back here. I'm sorry, somebody have a question?
I just said create a route.
Okay, perfect. Yes. So they create a route. So they've done that for us. So I'm going to come down here and steal the route. Okay, and I think I only need, yeah, I need this. Okay, where should I put my route? Do I put it down here?
Just above it, right?
Yeah. So don't want to put anything below this if statement or it's going to make our app not work. So if I paste this in here, let me zoom out so I can fix it. That looks good. Okay. So we've created our route for our create friends. We give it the method post because whenever we're taking data in, we want to basically protect or not take in data that we shouldn't be taking in or that we don't want. Now, we call that route, when that route is triggered, it calls this method. And I have this data here. So what data type is data? What am I creating?
Array.
Dictionary.
Dictionary, right? So the first name, F name, L name, OCC, where have we seen these before?
In our string percent thing.
Yeah, in the string percent thing. So in our, and I already had it right there. In our friend.py, we have this query, right? That's expecting, and we're using this syntax, the percent sign, and then the variable goes between the parentheses and the S signifies that it's a string, right? So F name, L name, OCC corresponds to this dictionary, F name, L name, OCC.
What
Okay,
is
so
the parenthesis or like the modulus sign thing do again? Like
so if you remember way back to when we did strings and string interpolation, the new syntax is the letter F before the string, and we put the variable names in here. MySQL is written in C and C++, so it uses this older syntax. This is what works with MySQL, so the data can be sanitized. So we use this percent.
so like the parenthesis, like the quotes or whatever, we use this.
Yes. Yeah. So instead of using the curly brace is what we usually use with the F string. So we use this older syntax, and it's for every time we create a variable inside of a query, we're going to use this percent sign, parentheses, variable name, and S. Okay, so that's the word I keep forgetting. I forget what they're called again. But so if we want to pass variables into our query, we have to create a dictionary. Okay, so we have to create a dictionary called data. Why does it have to be called data?
Because it doesn't necessarily have to, right?
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't necessarily have to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we're passing it here, right? We're going to be calling this save method, the save class method on our friend with data. And we called our parameter data too. So you're right. It doesn't have to be called data, but basically this is the dictionary that we're going to pass into when we try to submit data to our backend, to our database. We have to create a dictionary, and the keys on our dictionary have to correspond with these variable names. Okay, so if I change this to first underscore name, it's going to break. It's going to say, I don't know what you're talking about, first underscore name. I'm expecting F name. So these have to match. You don't have to change them the way that they do. You can leave it as first name. It doesn't really matter. But the keys on the dictionary have to match the variable names in our prepared statement. There it is, it came back. Okay, does that make sense? Questions? Okay. So is this going to work? If I go to my form and
Don't you need to add the request in?
yes, perfect. So I'm getting these warnings here, right? So it doesn't know what I'm talking about with request. It doesn't know what I'm talking about with redirect, right? So where do I get those from?
You gotta import them by like the Flask and render template.
Yeah, they come from the Flask module. So I need to import request and import redirect. Cool. So now I don't see any errors. My server's still running. Right? Yep, still good. So now I'm going to give it a try. So come back, refresh. Actually, let me just go back. And I'm going to refresh my form just in case. I don't know who Todd Sparrow is. If that's the name of somebody, I don't know. And click add friend. So before I do this, what's going to happen?
It'll pop up on your website or that page.
It should, right? It should pop up on, because when I submit the form, it should refresh the page. But basically, it's the route is going to determine that. So I'm redirecting to the route. So if everything works okay, it should basically, yeah, it should pop up on the webpage. So
Do you
let's-
create a new HTML for that? Or For
Yes.
the new route?
So the HTML, I used it, I just put them both in the index.
Okay.
So the HTML is this form right here. And we'll come back to that. I want to talk a little bit more about the form. Okay. And there's Todd Sparrow, also a podcaster. So it's there. If I wanted to, I could see if it's in my database. Come over here. Go to, was it First Flask, right? Where is it? There it is. And let me open, I'll just go to table, friends, and there's Todd Sparrow. Okay. Any questions?
So these pages that we've been working on with like the MySQL connection and that's what allows it to go both ways, like for information to get pulled from databases and get put on the database then too?
Yes.
Okay.
All of the CRUD operations we want to perform can be written in friend.py. So if we want to update, delete, those are all going to be class methods in the model file for what you want to create an update.
Does MySQL connection ever change?
No, no. That's why I said if you weren't following me when I was going over it, then don't worry too much about it. Like I said, I don't understand everything that's going on in here. So all we're going to do is for each Flask application we make, we're just going to copy and paste this. And actually, you're going to make a template that you're going to use over and over again. So this MySQL connection, we're going to put it into a folder tomorrow, but for right now, nothing ever changes in here. Okay, any other questions?
Can I see your friend.py again?
Sure. Okay, so oh, you wanted to see the, do you want to see the bottom one?
No, it's okay.
Okay. All right, so how does, just as a review from last week, how does this information get from the form to our route?
Post method, right?
Yeah, the post method, but how do we populate the data? Like, let me just, if I want to look at the data that's coming from the form in my terminal, what would I need to do?
Is it the request for?
Yeah, so I just say print, spell print right, request dot form. Okay, so now if I go back and close this, back to my browser, and if I add another friend, I don't know, Andrew, I guess. Well, that's where I got it, Joe Rogan. Okay, podcaster. All right, so Andrew Maxwell, my brother, if I had one. So if I come back here, I can see that it comes from, where is it? Oh, I lost it. Let me find it. Here it is. So my data comes in on request.form, and remember request.form is an immutable dictionary. It's so we can treat it like a dictionary though. So we can't change the data once it comes in, but we can pull data off the form. And so this print statement gets me this in my terminal. So to create the dictionary that needs to be sent to my friend.save method, I just create the key and then assign it to whatever is in the form. Right, so request.form F name is Andrew, so at that, my F name becomes Andrew, L name is Maxwell. So that populates that, and then occupation podcaster comes from that. Okay. Questions? Okay. Cool. Let me, and I'm remembering to stop the recording. I can't believe it.